Hello everyone. From the bottom of my heart, I wish you all good health and peace that gently stays with you through life's ups and downs. Love has taken me through storms, silence, and miracles I never expected. Now, people gently ask, when will CEO Toan and Ly Tu Diem get married? I ask myself the same. Our hearts have chosen each other, but true love comes with its own trials. One question lingers like a quiet ache in the background. Will his mother be there? To witness our vows, to bless what we've fought so hard to keep? I don't know yet, but I know this: we've come too far to turn back now.
The question lingered like morning mist over the hills. When will they finally get married? Everyone who had followed their stormy journey, from the forest where they met, to the hospital where hearts were healed, to the quiet afternoons at the bakery, was waiting for the day. But for Toan and Diem, love was never a straight path. It had been carved by pain, by sacrifice, and above all, by patience. Toan, once a powerful CEO buried in deadlines and expectations, had found peace in something far humbler: a girl with tired eyes and a brave soul, who had saved him when the world turned dark. Diem, once broken and shamed, now stood tall in her own strength, building a life from scratch with flour on her hands and kindness in her heart. They talked about marriage often, not with urgency, but with quiet certainty, like a seed waiting for the right season. But one question always hovered: would his mother, the woman who had once distrusted Diem, ever accept this love? The turning point came one evening. Toan's mother, now older and more reflective, visited the bakery unannounced. She watched from the doorway as Diem tied a ribbon around a box of warm bread, smiling gently at a customer. There was no bitterness in her hands, no resentment in her voice, only calm strength. When Toan noticed his mother at the door, he stepped forward, heart pounding. But before he could speak, the older woman walked in, looked at Diem, and said, "I see now why my son chose you." Diem stood frozen, unsure if it was forgiveness or another test. But when the woman reached into her bag and placed a small jade bracelet on the counter, one passed down in her family for generations, the answer was clear. It was a silent blessing. That night, under the soft light of the bakery's signboard, Toan knelt before Diem, not in front of a crowd, not at a grand hotel, but right where their new life had quietly begun. "Will you marry me? Here, in the life we built together?" With tears in her eyes and flowers still on her apron, she said yes. The wedding didn't come with chandeliers or gold-plated invitations. It came with flowers picked from the local field, with the scent of fresh bread in the air, and with a family, including Toan's mother, gathered not out of obligation, but love. They didn't need a perfect date. They didn't need the world's approval. They just needed each other, and the quiet blessing of a heart that had once doubted, but now believed. And so, the long-awaited question found its answer. They would marry when love was ready. And yes, his mother would be there, smiling in the front row. In the days leading up to the wedding, the entire town seemed to come alive with a quiet joy. News of Toan and Diem's love story had spread far and wide, not because of fame or wealth, but because of the way they had held on to each other when the world gave them every reason not to. Diem, though excited, often woke up in the middle of the night, unsure if this happiness was real or just a fragile dream. She had lived through so many storms, betrayal, fear, and loneliness. That peace felt almost unfamiliar. But every time she turned her head and saw Toan beside her, arms wrapped gently around her, she remembered this was real. He chose her, again and again. Toan, on the other hand, was a man transformed. The ruthless businessman had softened. He laughed more, listened more. He found joy in watching Diem bake and holding her hand as they picked wild flowers for their small garden, and hearing her hum lullabies while cleaning the house. It wasn't the life he had imagined, but it was the life his heart had longed for all along. The wedding day came quietly, not with loud announcements, but with the golden light of dawn and the sound of birds gently calling the morning. Diem wore a simple white dress she sewed herself, with lace she had traded for at the market. Toan wore his father's old suit, tailored to fit him. Their aisle was a narrow path between blooming jasmine and sunflowers planted by neighborhood children. The officiant was a kind old man from the village who smiled more than he spoke. And then, there she was, Toan's mother, standing proudly, holding a bouquet of lotus flowers. Her eyes were wet, but not with sadness. She had finally come to see what her son had seen all along. A woman of courage, not shame. A survivor, not a victim. A daughter, not a burden. When Toan and Diem exchanged vows, they didn't promise forever with fancy words. They promised to try, every single day, to keep choosing each other, even when it was hard. To build not a perfect life, but a real one, with burnt toast, rainy mornings, and long embraces. And when the crowd clapped, when petals fell from the sky, when laughter echoed into the fields, it was not just a wedding. It was healing. It was hope. It was the answer to every moment they had doubted, suffered, endured, and loved anyway. And so they began again, not as a CEO and a runaway bride, not as a man saved and a girl who saved him, but simply as Toan and Diem, two hearts, one love, home at last. Married life for Toan and Diem began in the quietest, most beautiful way, with shared sunrises, the scent of fresh bread, and the warmth of hands always finding each other. Their new home, though modest compared to Toan's old mansion, was filled with laughter, music, and the aroma of Diem's baking. She opened a small bakery at the edge of town, Diem's Light, named not after herself, but after the light she wanted to give others who, like her, had once walked in darkness. The little shop became a gathering place, not just for bread and pastries, but for stories, comfort, and gentle beginnings. Toan, now stepping away from the world of ruthless business, chose to invest his energy in things that truly mattered. He helped rebuild local schools, sponsored shelters for women in crisis, and quietly ensured that no one in their village went to sleep hungry. His name was no longer spoken in boardrooms, but it was whispered with gratitude in countless homes. Sometimes, at night, the couple would sit by the porch, watching the fireflies dance. Diem would rest her head on Toan's shoulder and whisper, "I still can't believe we made it," and he would gently reply, "We didn't just make it, we're living it." Despite the calm, life still had its challenges. There were misunderstandings, days of fatigue, and the pressures of healing old scars. But now, unlike before, they faced everything together. Toan's mother, once hardened by pride and tradition, had slowly become Diem's greatest support. She began visiting the bakery every morning, not just to help knead the dough but to chat with Diem, sharing recipes, stories, and moments of laughter. She no longer saw Diem as a girl who had escaped, but as a daughter who had finally come home years past. And one spring morning, as the village prepared for the tent festival. Diem stood in front of her shop with one hand on her growing belly. Smiling at the children running by, Toan came up behind her, wrapping his arms gently around her waist. "Are you tired?" he asked softly. "No," she said, turning to face him, "just grateful." They didn't need luxury. They didn't crave attention. They only needed each other, and the quiet promise they had once made beneath blooming jasmine and a gentle village sky. Their love was no longer a fight against fate. It had become a life, one that whispered peace into every ordinary day. And in that peaceful life, the once lost girl and the once lonely man found everything they had ever dreamed of and more. In a world often ruled by status, power, and social expectations, the story of Toan and Diem reminds us that true love isn't defined by wealth or prestige, but by courage, sacrifice, and emotional connection. Their journey, from pain to peace, from misunderstanding to understanding, teaches us lessons deeper than any textbook ever could. Toan, once a powerful CEO with influence and control, lost everything that defined his identity. But in that loss, he found something far greater: the sincerity of a woman who loved without condition. Diem, once treated as disposable by those who should have protected her, never lost her innate kindness. Even in suffering, she chose compassion over bitterness. One of the most powerful lessons from their story is that healing often comes not from revenge or pride, but from forgiveness and trust. Diem could have remained angry at the world, yet she opened her heart to Toan. Toan could have rebuilt his empire alone, but he chose to rebuild a life with her. Their love wasn't perfect. It was tested by illness, by prejudice, and by their own fears. But every challenge only deepened their bond. They taught us that love is not found in grand gestures, but in small, daily acts of care. A bowl of porridge when sick, a roof over the head when all else is lost. A silent promise that says, "I will not leave you behind." Another beautiful lesson is that people can change. Toan's mother, once harsh and judgmental, transformed when she opened her heart to understand Diem's pain. Her acceptance was not forced. It was earned through patience, honesty, and the quiet strength Diem carried in her silence. Ultimately, the story shows us that no matter how broken the past is, it does not define the future. We always have a choice to love, to forgive, to rebuild. And when we choose with sincerity, life responds with unexpected grace. Toan and Diem's love was not a fairy tale. It was real, raw, and imperfect, and that is what made it beautiful. The lesson: true love isn't about having the perfect partner. It's about being the right partner, one who listens, stays, and grows. In the end, the most powerful force is not fate or fortune. It is the quiet, determined beating of a heart that chooses love again and again.